So good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everybody. Welcome to our CIO webinar this morning, to organizing through this pandemic. So about 3 or 4 weeks ago here in the US anyway, we woke up and found that the coronavirus was going to have a massive effect on the work environment. And so this pandemic has created an environment that urgently pushed organizations to create a platform where people could work from literally anywhere. So we created this virtual environment literally overnight. And since that time, organizations have been deploying different solutions and getting their people to work, both from a productive perspective and a secure perspective. And so we're going to go through with my colleagues this morning a bunch of questions and perspectives on the different industries that we've got represented. So I'd like to now turn it over to our moderator, Gary Sorrentino, a Zoom CIO advisor that will carry the event. Thank you, Gary.
Thanks, Harry. I hope everybody's doing well out there. This morning's panel is CIOs from global enterprise organizations. And today we're going to discuss how they enabled this rapid change we went through, how they're supporting their virtual workers, how they overcame the traditional security barriers of people working remotely, how they resolve challenges very quickly, and how we're adapting to that new way of working. But first, we just have a little bit of housekeeping to do. During today's session, the chat and raise hand functionality will be closed for the duration of the webinar. Please use the QA function to submit your questions, which we'll answer at the end. Today's webinar is being recorded and will be available on demand, so it'll be great if everybody can mute their mics. And we are streaming this webinar to Facebook Live. Okay, maybe we can get a polling question up here real quick. Can we put a polling question up? So the polling question is, how many people are working from home right now? Wow. So I think before everybody even finishes, maybe we can actually share the results. So as you can see, 94%, 405 of us are actually working from home right now. Okay, let's get that off the screen. And let's start, okay? So what I would like to do is like to have the panel introduce themselves. So Shob, why don't we start with you?
Sure. Good morning, everybody, and thanks for joining. I am Shobs. My name is Shobna, but I generally go by Shobs because it's much easier. I am the CIO at Uber. I've been at Uber for almost 5 years now. My background has been technology throughout, so I've spent about 25 years in technology through various businesses like CBS, CNET, Rocket Fuel, and Uber, and in a couple different countries like Russia, India, and the US. Last few weeks have been definitely interesting, and thanks for putting this together, Zoom, so we can discuss our experiences and hopefully learn from each other.
Mr. Ackerman.
Hello, everyone, and I hope everybody is safe and sound. I'm Brian Ackerman. I am from Korn Ferry, the recruiting professional services and outsourcing firm. About 6 years as their chief information officer, and for the last year and a half, I've been the managing partner of Korn Ferry Advance, our career coaching business. So thank you to the panelists for doing this, and look forward to a great conversation.
Thank you. Upinder?
Hi, I'm Upinder Fanda. I'm the CIO at Unisys. I've been CIO here for about 5 years, and I've actually been in the corporation for 40 years. So, last few weeks, I think for everyone, has been interesting to say the least. So I think the conversation will be good, and hopefully we can all learn from each other. And I also hope, first of all, thanks for everyone joining, and I hope everyone is safe out there.
And Brian, let's wrap up with you.
Hello, everybody. I don't have the 40-year tenure of Upinder, but I've been, my name is Brian Kirkland. I'm the CTO for Choice Hotels International. I've been there for about 4 years. For many of you, you may not be familiar with Choice. We're actually a hospitality company, but we're also a franchising and a technology company. So we represent a powerful network of small business owners that franchise more than 7,000 hotels in over 40 countries around the world. So it's 1 out of every 10 hotels in the US, and over 500 million hotel rooms and 200 million guests every year. So we provide technology and services to serve those guests and to help our hotel owners successfully run their businesses. And I just want to thank you for having this meeting this morning, Harry, and for the help Zoom's had. It's been very instrumental in our success in this time.
Well, thank you all for joining. And let's start with the first discussion point. So most of us had some form of remote access. We had work from home features and things like that, but we kind of went from work from home, remote access to full virtual workers in 1 to 2 days. Right? That must have been a big accomplishment. Let's start with Shobes. How did you do that for your company?
Thank you, Gary. So very interesting. In fact, this morning when I got up, I got an email from one of our people in India. And amongst it, there is a sentence which says, I've been telling everybody that IT had developed a solution sooner than the time it takes us to put a deck for work from home. So really, it was important to do it very quickly. So just to take a step back, Uber has more than 50,000 employees and contingent workers. We operate in over 70 countries around the world. We have 700 plus offices. And when the COVID-19 issue and response of work from home or shelter in place came, the total shutdown was staged and it took place in waves in different parts of the world. Manila was a little bit more urgent when this started. We did have a day and a half before it came to the US. And different parts of the world are in different stages right now. India is in complete shutdown. There's a curfew out there. US is shelter in place, which means there's still some people who can go back, who can go out, and we can still get assets shipped and things like that. When we look at our population, there is the corporate employees. These are the employees that are used to working from home a little bit more. But then we also have a big part of customer support. We have our Center of Excellences, BPOs, and green light hubs. And these are the places where we support our driver partners and our other business lines. And another slice of the same information is that Uber has several lines of businesses. While our driver rider partners are what people know a lot, but we also have a very big footprint in Uber Eats, where we deliver food, Uber Freight, where we deliver goods, and U4B and other businesses. So when this started, like, the first question was to ensure that our staff is safe. So we already started a little before the shelter in place was put in place with a strong work from home policy, and we started pushing that. And with the first message itself, we were thinking, what kind of tech, accessories, systems, processes do we need for our people to feel productive? As an example, with the first message out, when we asked people to start working from home, if they were comfortable, we asked them to take their monitors, accessories, whatever they needed from the office, just come in, put in a form, and take it home, because we kind of knew that this might be a little bit of a longer stint. When you look at systems, thankfully Uber had been a very SaaS and cloud-friendly company from the beginning. So both our infrastructure and tools had the built-in capacity to quickly surge. We could quickly adapt and expand to meet our needs. And as I already mentioned, with 700 plus offices, and out of that, we have at least 12 plus offices around the world with strong engineering presence, our corporate workforce was already used to some amount of virtual collaboration. And in a general office environment, we use Slack, we use Zoom, Atlassian, project task management tools, all of those for collaboration, even in the pre-COVID times. But our customer support crew around the world, that's a whole different story. And this is 30,000 plus people around the world, employees and contingent workers. And recreating the setup with them with ticketing tools, knowledge-based access, voice calls from home instead of a center, that was a pretty big lift for us. And we used our footprint in the public cloud setup to quickly spin up and support virtual desktop solutions to enable our customer work from home. Our reliance on collaboration tools during this time has increased a lot. So we Zoom with our teams. There are virtual lunches and drinks that we do. There's a recommended list of virtual games on Slack that we play sometimes with our teams. Tonight, actually, I'm going to have a Zoom meeting with one of my girlfriends where we will do some online shopping and drinks. So that should be very interesting. And then
Great. So listen, let's go on to the next question. I just have one little thing to put in here. And you mentioned Uber Eats. It's just what we've noticed. We've been hosting a lot of virtual meetings with clients, and the clients have been trying to move their physical meetings to their virtual meetings. And one actually used your Uber Eats product to deliver lunch to the participants at the right time. It was a very unique way of taking a physical meeting and making it virtual, just as a best practice. Okay, but now
lots of creativity going on right now. I would, innovation and creativity. I think it's the two things coming together. But new businesses and new ways of operating are being invented daily.
So now that we have the staff working home, right, and it's not just in a Sunday night or a work from home day, now we have full-time virtual workers. How are we handling like the various home technology decisions? Like I was on a call the other day and the moderator, his internet stopped and I had to pick up as the moderator right then and there. So how are we handling all the problems people are having home? Why don't we start with Brian Kirkland on that one?
Sure, thank you. The short answer is communicate. There's a lot of training going on right now, a lot of leveraging the cloud going on. Luckily for us, we were already Zoom customers. We had a great collaboration solution. And like Shtopa had talked about, we had a lot of dependence already on cloud-based technology for how our teams operated. So we were able to scale quickly in a lot of those places. If you're not already there, you're probably behind the eight ball, and you need to solve that now is the first thing to say. But one of the biggest challenges we've seen is our team's face working is a lack of social interaction and going disconnected. So we're amping up everything with regard to communication right now, from weekly all hands meetings to daily stand-ups to sharing best practices and technology tips every single day. We've had birthday celebrations online. We've had bring your pet to work meeting events. Every single day we're doing something to try to make them feel connected. But luckily we've been ahead of the curve on a lot of areas. There were some concerns we had. So one of those was VPN. VPN capacity was one of our bigger challenges right out of the gates. We weren't scaled for 100% work at home. The good news is our team was able to solve that very quickly. Not only did they scale our existing solution, but we quickly pivoted to a cloud-based solution and just stood that up in a matter of days. So it wasn't that big of an issue, but it was a big concern out of the gate. Another one that's been interesting is ISP congestion and poor home internet. I actually read something interesting that Netflix is being asked in Europe to stop streaming HD to avoid straining the internet during this outbreak. And if your kids are like mine, they're probably online a lot more these days. We haven't run into a whole lot of those issues for our associates, other than some of them having to go out and actually upgrade their ISP download limits. But most of our work we're able to do remotely and do it virtually very well. That's for internal. One of the other areas that we focus on, obviously, is we have a huge customer base of franchisees. We have over 13,000 franchisees that are small business hotel owners that have to meet payroll, pay their mortgages every month, support their families during this crisis, and take care of their guests. And so it's been a big challenge for them. And so we're using technology to help them evolve and work through this as well. So, for example, some of those hotels are doing things like converting to temporary hospitals and housing for emergency workers. They're unprecedented changes and things that we're having to create process for real time and then train and roll out to our associates and to our franchisees real time. So we're spending a lot of time on Zoom, a lot of time building communications, teaching people how to repurpose hotels, how to apply for government aid, all the things that you would expect. And honestly, Zoom itself has been a huge part of that success, but a lot of it has been our team's willingness and ability to pivot real time, leveraging technologies in the cloud.
Great.
Just want to add two things. One is, as CIOs, when we plan for disasters and business continuities, I think we'd all agree that they were always planned to be sort of like localized from a certain geographical area, whereas this pandemic is unprecedented because it's taking on a global nature, and we heard Shobes talk about it, and I'm sure Upinder will as well. So I think that's one. And two is, at times of uncertainty, communicate. And we see a lot of that happening from CEOs out to the entire organization. I think, Upinder, your CEO addressed your entire organization. You're having daily meetings with the CEO, etc. Communicating, over-communicating, trying to bring people in is super important.
Yeah. This is also the point that all of the investments that as CIOs we've been making over the last 3 or 4 years, whether transition to the public cloud, mobility tooling, embed collaboration. This is where all of this hopefully is paying off. And I know some of the tough conversations I've had with our CFO and CEO on why do we have to make our intranet resources available more easily remotely, that we're a little tough to get your head around, are serving us right now.
They're listening to you real well. They're listening to you right now, Brian, right?
Yeah, exactly, right.
Whatever you want. Yes.
There's a little bit of I told you so going on, but just a little bit.
Well, that's what I mean, right? Now we're everyone's listening, but they all forget the budget conversations 2 years ago on VDI and everything else, and
yeah, exactly.
Now VDI is our savior, right?
So now, Brian, you brought up a key word. You said VPN, and one of the things that companies have always had a problem with is sending people home to work remotely full time was always a security challenge. We couldn't do it because of this reason or that reason. We didn't have enough VPN capacity. We couldn't guarantee the security of people who are working home. We have clean desk policies at work. We don't have clean desk policies at home. This is a question that everybody's been asking. Upinder, how did you handle that in your company?
Yeah, I mean, I think, we all had that challenge, right? So, VPN obviously traditionally has been the tunnel that you make available for remote working. But Brian mentioned it as well. But, I think a lot of us are moving towards VDI, and, Unisys is in 50 countries, every region in the world. We had, I think Shelby mentioned, Manila, Hungary. We have, call centers. Those are associates that normally go to work. They don't work from home, right? So majority, we're a technology services company and a security company, are geared up with corporate devices, right, which are fully secure, right? So, one of the things I would say is, as much as you can, your workforce should have a corporate device, right? Because you can then ensure the security. Now, when you have thousands of people that never worked from home before, and now you have to enable them to work from home, and all over the world, right? The logistics of getting associate devices is not so easy. Now we managed. We run a refresh program, I'm sure most companies do, where you're refreshing laptops and devices all over the world, and then you dispose of them. But, we managed to redeploy some of our older devices to people that didn't have devices at home. But one of the big things for us was we've been rolling out VDI in all our call centers. And so where an associate had their own device at home, it was very easy for us to enable them. There were a few nuances we had to work on as far as, especially with a call center associate, they use certain technology for phone calls, Avaya, etc., that we had to work through fairly quickly. But we managed to do that. But from a security perspective, you want to try to keep as much, corporate devices is out there rather than personal. If it's personal, then really you want to try to get VDI. VDI would be your most secure avenue for that. And then, VPN is a risk, right? It's a big risk, because when you're giving access on VPN, you're basically giving access to your house, right? It's one of the things we've looked at in certain areas, not all over the place, because we have a different dynamic. A majority of our associates actually don't need to use VPN, because we have our product Stealth, which protects our associates, and therefore we are almost VPN-less. Where we have had to deploy VPN, we're looking at stopping the split tunneling. So therefore, they only connect to our network. Now that does put a little bit more effort on our network, but that would be, let's say, the most secure one, right? To do that.
We're getting an awful lot of questions.
Yeah, so I want to move on to some of our questions and get some of the other questions. Not to interrupt you, but it was all great conversation. One of the things that people have been asking is, look, we went from working remotely to just working great at home, right? And people are coming up with really great ways to work great at home while they're being remote. Maybe Brian Ackerman, maybe you can help us on some of the ways your companies are doing that and how you're enabling employees to be great workers at home.
I appreciate it. Thanks, Gary. And I think there are a couple of things. I mean, first, and you said it in the lead, and we see it in the questions. It's a great time to capture the expertise of your employee base. So one of the first things we did when we recognized that our teams were doing great work to get everybody safe, settled, and enabled using technologies like Zoom, was then actually have a working group and a task force and a place to collaborate specifically to gather best practices over not just immediately, but the coming weeks and months over now that you are remote, how do you service your colleagues and your clients best? Korn Ferry is a professional services firm, so our lifeblood is meeting and collaborating with our clients, and that's changing dramatically very, very quickly. So we established a task force and collaboration tools specifically to help with the question of gathering best practices on how to do the work well once you were remote. But I guess there have been a couple of tips and tricks that we've discovered, at least over the course of the first couple of weeks of working through this issue. And probably the most important is that people need to relax. Authenticity matters. And in a lot of ways, the playbook, the rules of doing virtual meetings that existed a month ago are gone, right? There was almost a need to hide the fact that you were working remotely, right? All of that now is out the window. And we all have stories like, our CEO was telling us yesterday, as you would imagine, we're updating our board of directors constantly on this pandemic. And while he was doing that, one of his two kids walked in and just broke in and asking, "Hey, what's the Wi-Fi password, Dad?" Because he had just
I hope he
changed
didn't answer it.
Probably
well,
answered it, right?
Interestingly enough, he wrote it down on a piece of paper and passed it over. And a month ago, that would have been, mortifying. We would have all said, "Oh my God, there's a real life going on." I think people have to recognize, first off, the board just, did what we all do right now and wait patiently until people re-engage. It's okay. Right. And as a matter of fact, in this world where we're learning how to interact over video, the authenticity that shows is actually a real benefit. So that's our first recommendation is relax. Everybody's in the same boat,
So Harry, I just want to keep those questions going. Sorry, I just want to keep showing the questions going. We're getting lots of good questions. So this is actually coming out from one of the questions is, we've had the benefit of a lot of companies converting from physical to virtual. So we see it probably more than most of the other panelists because we see it across other companies. Some of the things that people are asking is, how have people changed the way they manage staff? But I keep seeing this in the questions being asked, isolation. Maybe you can just add a little bit on that.
Yeah, I think that's a big part of it. There's a number of us who are familiar with working from home, and I'm looking at my colleagues here. It's kind of like we don't need the office company, but I think that there's a lot of people who need that sort of social environment at work, to be able to have that coffee, to be able to have that break and grab someone for a lunch and let's go out and grab a coffee, etc. I think that there's it's one of the worries that I have is that people in isolation aren't used to being isolated like that. And that being said, Gary, you and I had a coffee break on Monday afternoon, right? We just sort of hung out for half an hour and had a cup of coffee, and that was convenient. I've done lunch over Zoom, and I'm doing cocktails later that's Zoom with cocktails, or as my sister calls it, Zoom tails. So I'm doing that at 5 o'clock Eastern this afternoon, 9 o'clock in Ireland. So I think that's very important, is to try and maintain that social environment. I was talking to a colleague of Apinder's this morning from Unisys, and they're going to create like a competition on a regional scale and on a global scale to sort of create sort of fun and interesting backgrounds, etc. Shobes, on Monday, you introduced me to the Snap camera. That was kind of cool, right? So, and I introduced that to my wife, who's the CIO for the Scarsdale School District, and she's talking to, sort of tech teachers in the schools. Thank you, Shobes.
It's also remembering that our clients, the people we serve, through this tool have exactly the same concerns, the same isolation issues, right? So it's a wonderful opportunity to extend beyond your company's boundaries to your clients and engage with them in a new way, right? Again, no one would do a Snapchat filter, a month ago. It's a great way to.
I just want to finish the story that my wife shared with me. So she was talking to one of the teachers, and the teachers are, the baby came up, the kid came up and like wanted attention, and you could see her handing the kid off through the virtual background. The kid disappeared, then the kid came back. So then my wife did the dog one, with the big tongue that comes out, and the kid was like in hysterics and calmed down, and so then they were able to continue the conversation. The only feedback was hard to take you serious when you look.
So before we go to the next question, let's do this. We all have a common background because this was a structured webinar, right? Why doesn't everybody just change to the background that they like the most, right? Real quickly.
How do I do that?
Because this is the new board meeting. This is what we see people connecting with. People are connecting with backgrounds, different things at home. Sometimes it is the kids coming in. Listen, our final question for the panelist has actually come up 3 times in the questions. And so I really want to make sure that we get that question done, and then we'll turn it over to the open questions. What's next? So now we got people working from home. They're going to be working from home for weeks, months. We're not really sure. And I'd like really just a quick 1-minute answer, and I'll go around with everybody about what do you see how we get back to normal, or do we not go back to what was normal and there's a new way? So why don't we start with Mr. Ackerman?
I think we all recognize that this is going to go on for a while. And while what's going to happen is we're going to understand and appreciate the natural efficiencies that we're having to get now. So cost of travel, cost of getting people together has always been the thing to do when you really want that intimate contact between people. As we do that more, and it's proven to be effective because we're all still getting work done, then chances are, a great deal of this kind of collaboration mode, we believe, is going to just become part of our arsenal. So it will have a dramatic impact on real estate and space planning and organizational dynamics. That's not a bad thing necessarily, but necessity is the mother of invention, right? So we expect that to happen here, at least in the professional services space at Korn Ferry.
I fundamentally believe that organizations wanted to adopt a model like this, then everybody was dropped in the deep end about 4 weeks ago, and here we are. I don't think it's going to go back quite the way it was before. I think people are choosing to make life choices. I think that as employees, people are realizing that they can make an equal, if not better, contribution in this environment. Although kids being home from school doesn't help. And I think bigger than that is employers realize that their employees are happier, their employees are making great contributions, and hey, it's like I can save a boatload of money from a cost perspective. The flip side is, Upinder, how many people do you have working from home right now?
Around 20,000, I'd say.
So you're running 20,000 offices.
Yeah. I mean, you're right. You're right. Life going forward is I think, going to be very different. We've had, with Zoom's been around, we've installed it for some time, and encouraging people to use video, and the adoption of video is sporadic. But I think with this pandemic, I think video is really going to take off. Because I think one of the questions there was people with isolation, people want to see each other. That'd be great. I think we've all talked about communication. We're communicating regularly, but structured, right? Both from an HR perspective, from an IT perspective, and from a marketing perspective. We're reaching out to all our associates so that they all feel part of the team. Right. And, what we've managed to do in the last 2 weeks, which, our clients have appreciated. We've had multiple emails from big clients saying how quickly Unisys managed to continue to support them through this pandemic and the virtual working and all the changing around. And that's how good you are at communicating with your team. And that's all 25,000 of them. And how quickly do you enable them? Right. And of course, our priority was to have each individual safe and their health safe before, worrying about whether we can support our clients. But the paramount was to make sure that I mean, and now I don't know how it is with everyone else. We've had a couple of cases, in the whole of Unisys where we've had some positive testing. Unfortunately, that is, I think, we've been fingers crossed lucky on that front, and we've enabled a lot of people to work from home. So hopefully that's where it stays. We're all working
That's
with
great.
that in the background.
Yep.
That's great. Yeah.
So Brian or so.
An interesting thing that you mentioned, Terry. If any of us had gone to our CEOs a week ago, a month ago, or actually not a week ago, because we did go a week ago, but let's say a month ago, 2 months ago, and said, "Hey, I want to take the entire workforce and go distribute it and test it out," they'll laugh at us, right? So we're getting this opportunity to truly test how effective and efficient we can be, what works well and doesn't work well, and how do we think that changes and evolves the way we work, and even how we scale ourselves over time as we look at hiring challenges and things like that across the globe. And so this is an opportunity for us to learn while we're dealing with the pandemic. For Choice, it's actually an interesting thing in many fronts, because it's not just about how we work as associates, right? It's how we interact and engage with our franchisees. It's how guests' behaviors may evolve and change out of this. Are they going to look and index more towards touchless experiences, or when are guests going to feel more comfortable to come back out and go travel again? Is this going to be consistent worldwide or by region? There's a lot of questions that we're getting to answer and discover that a month ago we would have never had the opportunity to go down and discover. But at some point, normal will return, and we'll have a new toolbox of things that we've learned that we can put to work. We actually had some teams that are doing agile planning events that we used to put everybody in a room together, 30 people in a room, and sit there and design these massive solutions and say, okay, what are we going to do for the next sprint? The team came back from their first Zoom-based interactive, everybody online session and said, that was the best design session we've ever had. And I didn't expect that, honestly. And so there's some interesting learnings that we may actually employ even when we go back into the workforce that we're learning in this.
Government organizations don't allow for board meetings to be virtual. They have to be like in person, but those get relaxed when they have a state of emergency like we have in New York State and many other states. That they at the school district, they had their virtual board meeting the other night, and everybody said that was 100% better than doing it in a in-person meeting.
Harry, and you have a point. Like there'll be certain meetings, there'll be certain events that we will move towards and say it'll be much easier to do that virtually. And depending on how long this experiment goes on, we'll also come out with certain events saying 100% virtual might not be the solution. So I think we'll move more towards a hybrid solution, but more in the direction of virtual than what the thought process of people was before the last few weeks. I don't think we're going to get 100% virtual for everything, but we'll make more. We'll go more in that direction.
But the thread continues to be how throughout all of this is we're thinking about how work happens, and how work happens differently, better, either by necessity because of where we're in, or just better because it's the best design session that we've had when you actually get people in this kind of environment. That's probably the silver lining to all of this. And I think we will all become, more efficient, better engaged, in these activities as a result of this kind of exercise.
We're coming down to the last 10 minutes, and the questions are just coming in fast and furious. So thank everyone out there for sending in questions, but there seems to be a theme. And the one I'm looking at right now is security. So questions are coming in like, how are you managing security at the home when you don't want to be the tech support for someone's router at home? Anybody have opinions about that?
Yes, well, I do. I asked my wife to take care of it.
Now, how about does anybody have a tech solution to that?
Well, I don't know. I mean, we're giving guidance out to all our home workers, and I just want to say, we've enabled people to work virtually. We're learning every day, right? I mean, some of the questions that are coming up are in our heads as well. Do we know the answers? We're trying to mitigate some of this, like that someone asked a question. I saw a question on the last mile provider. The internet, the local internet, and each individual's house around the world is going to vary significantly. right? So, we have a lot of associates in India, and, and so, productivity, is it going to be as it was when you were working from the office? At least some of those say. But, again, it's communication. It's getting out, guidelines on securing your router at home, and even basics like having a password on your internet. You'd be surprised how many don't, right?
And password not be like just password,
right?
But having a real standard to that.
We there's a whole slew of, I can never remember my password. Anyway.
So that's another question that's coming through is that, when we have people back in our physical world, right, we are training them. We're doing fish testing, right? We're doing different kinds of testing. And everybody notices that the email scams for coronavirus are getting high. Our email filters are not picking them up because they're faster than we can identify them.
It's so sad that people do this stuff.
But there's two parts questions here. One, how are we keeping these from getting to our employees? And two, how are we training the employees about things like phishing and security when they're now all working virtually?
Well, I think anything changes there, to be honest with you, as far as how you train and how you reach out to associates. It's the same as before.
If this is the first time you're exploring a defense in depth or a strategy around security, or the first time you're talking to your employees about phishing, you've got a different problem to solve, honestly. I mean,
so I think here's a better question. How many people of the companies that are on the you guys have done a phishing test since people have been home? Okay, I got Brian with one. I got Brian and Brian. Okay, but it's something I'm sure that Shobes and Uptinder, your guys are going to do in the future.
But it's a process, right? It's happening since the exercise because it's a process inside of Korn Ferry, and I'm sure.
And I think you need to be careful. And I think you need to be careful. It's kind of like we did phishing. We've done phishing tests at Zoom, but in the last 3-4 weeks we haven't. And I think you got to be careful. You got to be sensitive to people at home because it's uncertain, and you need, there has to be good balance.
I agree.
I think there are two questions here, right? One is kind of the good security practice that existed prior to COVID-19. This is a bad time to invent one. So hopefully the processes you put in place are scaling, right? So that's kind of one dimension of this. There is a dimension that we're all, to Binder's comment before, we're 2 weeks, 3 weeks in some cases, we're going to learn as we go. There will undoubtedly be new and different attack patterns that emerge specifically to leverage the situation we find ourselves in. Those are the ones that at least our security teams are starting to put their head towards, that need to take equal attention to, is now the time you have multi-factor authentication projects going on? I hope not. I mean, it's if you do, get them done really quick.
Okay, so here's another question that just came up. How do you monitor if the employees are actually working virtually?
I think this goes back to the age-old leadership question.
Yeah.
I don't think you have to monitor. And I don't think you monitor a lot even when people are at work. I think what you need to do is, again, figure out what your milestones are and measure those. And also understand, at least for the last few weeks, I don't think monitoring is top of mind for us. What is top of mind for us is safety, making sure people don't feel isolated, understanding that it's life and not just work. I mean, as everybody else said, I've got team meetings where there are kids sitting with their parents, or they just somebody's having a meltdown, or the fur babies come in. So this is the phase where we're looking at, really, let's make sure everybody is supported. I think if it goes long term, and I'm thinking months and years, yes, there will be monitoring, but that's not about rather watching people. It's more about the way you do work today. Like, what are your milestones? What are your goals? What are your OKRs? And let's see how we hit them, rather than just this watching.
You are 200% right. This is exactly the same as, sort of working in the office. You don't sit there and is this person programming? Are they paying the bills? It's like, they have deliveries, and if they're making, if they're making the contribution, then that's all that's important.
I think, Harry, I sort of manage, there's 3 words. There's trust, there's respect, and then there's fear. All right. So you have to balance those three things. And my first 2 are always, I trust my associates. Yep. I respect my associates. I expect them to trust and respect me too. There always has to be a little bit of a fear, because, you do have deliverables. and those deliverables do need to be met. And I encourage my management to manage their associates based on their performance, right? So even before this, I have 500 people around the world. I don't care if they're on a beach in Timbuktu and they're working on Zoom with a virtual background which says that they're in an office, and I am achieving my objective, right? And I'm delivering for this corporation. I really
That's
don't.
it. That's
right?
it. Absolutely right.
You stop delivering and you stop moving the corporation forward. That's when you have an issue. And that's where the fear comes in.
Yep.
It's the same answer as the security one. You continue doing what you were doing in the office to measure efficiency and productivity.
Okay, we're running down the home stretch. So here's what I'd like to do. And we answered a lot of the questions that came in different formats. 30 seconds each. Let's start with Harry. Just closing comments.
Ooh. Number one, safety. Number two, communicate to people. And number three is, remember, this will come to an end. None of us know when it will come to an end. And I would urge you to start thinking about what happens when when we see the light at the end of the tunnel. How do you plan for that re-entry?
Okay, Upinder?
I want to echo what Harry says. First of all, is security is paramount, right? And I think everyone knows that with a virtual workforce. Your VPN is your biggest risk, right? So monitor it, increase your monitoring on that. Keep your associates safe. We're all going to learn through this, and I think we're going to be better at what we do once we come out the other end of this. So
Thank you.
I wish everyone safety out there.
Mr. Kirkland.
I'd say, like everybody, echo those comments. Be safe, family, friends. Stay safe in your homes. Focus on your associates and their safety as well. And then I would say, at some point we're going to come out of this, but in the meantime, lean on your peers, lean on your network. Harry, the Zoom team's been a great partner for us in this activity, so I want to say thanks again. But lean on those partners, lean on those peers, and when we come out of this, see what we've learned and move forward from there.
Good. Mr. Ackerman?
I certainly echo any other comments, but I'd just also say now's a great time to, with all the tensions going on in the world right now, this is not the topic to generate tension. It's okay that your kid pops his head into the video. It's okay that your internet drops out for a moment, or you're wearing your baseball cap. It's human. It's authentic. This is what your colleagues, your associates, your clients are all looking to see right now. And it's a great way to take a challenge and turn it into a positive that brings you closer to your colleagues and associates and closer to your clients. It's be human. I mean, that's what we're all doing right now.
And Shobes, we started with you. Only great that we end with you.
Plus one to everything everyone said. Incrementally, I think, yes, it's actually going to get worse before it gets better. So there will be more areas, more questions that we don't know the answers to. We will not have a run book for. So be nimble, think outside the box. Let's figure out things together. And again, safety to everyone. Hope everybody's doing okay.
Well, I want to thank the panelists for your time. I want to thank the over 500 people that are connected right now, listening to this, and hopefully everybody stays safe and healthy. Thank you all for attending. Thank you all for participating. Have a great day.
Thank you.
Thanks very much. Thank you guys for joining us this morning. Really appreciate your time, and especially when you've got so much going on as well. So thank you.
Be safe.
Take care.
Bye-bye.